In a far-off galaxy, on a planet where the sky was a deep purple and the ocean shimmered with silver light, lived an alien mother named Thera. Her species, the Valyrians, were peaceful beings, known for their connection to nature and their wisdom. In ancient technology, they had no enemies, no wars, and for the most part, their lives were calm and serene. But there was one thing that threatened to destroy all of that: the alien debt. Thera's life had always been simple, filled with the care of her child, a young daughter named Lyra. The two lived in a small, peaceful village near a beautiful forest. Thera worked as a healer, using her knowledge of the natural world to help others. Life was good, and she never expected anything to disturb their quiet existence. However, everything changed one fateful day when a dark force arrived from the farthest reaches of the galaxy, the Zyrgan Empire. The Zyrgans were ruthless, powerful, and feared by every species across the galaxy. Their empire was built on conquest, control, and debt. The Zyrgans were known to lend resources, technology, and protection to weaker species, but always had a steep price. Anyone who owed them could never escape the grip of their debt. And Thera, unfortunately, had made the mistake of trusting them. Years ago, Thera's village had been struck by a terrible disease. Many people were sick, and the resources they needed to survive had dwindled. Desperate, Thera had turned to the Zyrgans for help. They had promised to cure the disease, to save her people, but at a price. At the time, Thera had no choice but to agree to their terms. She didn't fully understand what the Zyrgans wanted in return, but she trusted that the debt would be paid in time, as the Zyrgans had promised. However, she soon learned that the Zyrgans did not care about promises. Their debts were never-ending, and the price of borrowing from them was always far higher than anyone could imagine. As the years passed, Thera worked hard to repay the debt, but nothing she did seemed to be enough. The Zyrgans grew impatient, and soon they had come to collect. One morning, a dark looming ship appeared in the sky above Thera's village. It was the ship of the Zyrgan enforcers, and their arrival was not a good sign. The people of the village looked up in fear, knowing what this meant. Thera had hoped against hope that she could avoid this day, but now it was here. The Zyrgan enforcers landed, their massive figures stepping out of their ship, their black armor reflecting the sunlight. The leader, a tall and menacing figure named Commander Zare, approached Thera. His voice was cold, and his words carried an undeniable weight. "Thera of the Valyrians, you have failed to repay your debt," Commander Zare said. "It is time for payment. Your child will be taken as compensation." Thera's heart sank. She had expected the worst, but hearing it spoken aloud made it feel all too real. Her mind raced, searching for a solution, any way to avoid losing her daughter. But deep down, she knew there was no escaping the Zyrgans once they set their sights on something. "No," Thera said, her voice trembling. "Please don't take my child. I will do anything else, but not this." The enforcers remained unmoved. The leader's cold eyes locked onto Thera's as he stepped closer. "You should have known better than to cross the Zyrgans. We are not a species you can bargain with. Your debt is long overdue." Thera's mind raced. She thought of Lyra, her sweet, innocent daughter, who was the light of her life. There was no way she would let her go without a fight. But what could she do? The Zyrgans had technology far beyond anything the Valyrians could dream of. There was no escaping their grasp. Suddenly, as if by fate, a thought crossed her mind. What if there was someone else who could help? Someone who was not afraid of the Zyrgans. A human, an outsider from another world, with the courage and strength to defy the Zyrgan Empire. Thera had heard rumors of humans, strange creatures from a distant planet, who had faced impossible odds and won. Could this be her only chance? With the Zyrgan enforcers closing in, Thera made a decision. She would take the risk and seek out this human, no matter the cost. She had nothing left to lose. As the enforcers prepared to take her daughter, Thera grabbed her hand and whispered, "Stay strong, my little one. I won't let them take you." But the Zyrgans were relentless. Commander Zar raised his hand, signaling his soldiers to advance. Thera felt a surge of anger, but she also felt a deep fear in her chest. She was out of time. And then, as the Zyrgan enforcers closed in, something unexpected happened. A loud sound echoed through the sky. A ship, not like the Zyrgan warships, but something different, smaller, sleeker, and more agile, appeared overhead. It descended rapidly, landing between Thera and the approaching enforcers. The sound of its engines stopped, and the air was filled with a tense silence. Thera's heart skipped a beat. Could this be the human she had hoped for? As the Zyrgan enforcers moved closer, Thera's heart beat loudly in her chest. Her eyes were fixed on the strange, sleek ship that had just landed in front of her. For a moment, she was frozen. Was this the help she had hoped for? Could this human really be the one to save her daughter? The ship's hatch opened with a low, mechanical hum. Thera could barely breathe as she watched, waiting for whatever would come next. A figure stepped out of the ship, tall and broad-shouldered, unlike any alien Thera had ever seen. The figure wore a simple suit of strange, shiny material, not like the heavy, imposing armor of the Zyrgans, but something lighter, almost fluid in its design. The figure raised its head, and Thera saw the human for the first time. His skin was pale, his eyes a piercing blue, full of determination and something else she couldn't quite understand, something that seemed so different from the cold, calculating gaze of the Zyrgans. His expression was stern, but there was an unexpected kindness in it, as though he wasn't here to hurt anyone, but rather to help. "Stay back!" Thera shouted, her voice shaking as she stepped in front of Lyra, who was clutching her mother's side, terrified. The human stopped in his tracks, his eyes quickly scanning the situation. The Zyrgans were closing in, their weapons raised, and Thera knew they would not hesitate to strike. The human looked at the alien enforcers, then back at Thera, his expression never faltering. "I'm here to help," he said, his voice calm but firm. "No one is taking that child." Thera's heart leaped. The human's words felt like a lifeline thrown to her in the middle of an ocean of despair. But could this stranger really challenge the Zyrgans? Could a mere human stand against an empire that had crushed so many before? Commander Zar took a step forward, his eyes narrowing. "You are foolish, human," he sneered. "This is no place for your kind. The Valyrian has failed to repay her debt, and now the price will be paid. Stand aside, or face the consequences." The human didn't flinch. He simply stared at the Zyrgan commander, unshaken, as if he had faced threats like this many times before. Thera noticed something in his stance. He wasn't just standing there. He was waiting. Waiting for the right moment. "Step aside, or you'll regret it," Commander Zar repeated, his voice growing more menacing. Thera could see that. The Zyrgans didn't take threats lightly, but the human showed no signs of fear. He seemed to almost dismiss the commander's warning, his eyes scanning the Zyrgan soldiers like a predator sizing up his prey. Then, without warning, the human moved. His body moved with incredible speed, far faster than she had expected. He was like a blur, his movements precise, calculated. Before anyone could react, the human launched himself into action, disarming one of the Zyrgan soldiers in a fluid motion. The soldier, caught off guard, tried to retaliate but was quickly subdued by the human's expert skills. Thera's eyes widened in disbelief. This was no ordinary person. This human had skills, strength, and speed that defied logic. The Zyrgans roared in anger, and the remaining soldiers aimed their weapons at the human. But he was already moving again, evading their fire with ease. Thera watched in awe as the human fought, almost as if he was dancing, every step calculated, every move flawless. It was as if he had been trained for a moment like this. "Get down!" The human shouted to Thera and Lyra. Thera barely had time to react before the human grabbed her arm, pulling her and her daughter to the ground behind the ship, the Zyrgan. Blasts missed them by inches, and Thera could feel the heat of the shots against her skin as they hid. The human turned to her with a look of fierce determination. "I'm not going to let them take her. Stay low and stay close," he said, his voice soft but urgent. Thera nodded, her mind still spinning from the sudden turn of events. The Zyrgans were powerful, and yet here was this human, so seemingly fragile, standing up to them. How could he possibly succeed where so many others had failed? The human moved swiftly, crouching down and pulling something from his suit, a small metal device. He pressed a button, and a low, buzzing sound filled the air. Thera looked up, puzzled, as she saw a small force field materialize around them. The Zyran blasts bounced off it harmlessly, giving them a brief moment of relief. "This will hold for a little while," the human said, glancing at the ship. "But I'm not here to play defense. What are you going to do?" Thera asked, her voice barely a whisper. She had seen the Zyrgans destroy entire planets, and yet here this human was, offering her hope when all seemed lost. "I'm going to finish this," the human replied, his voice cold with resolve. He turned back toward the Zyrgan forces, his expression hardening. "I'm not leaving without that child." Thera's mind raced. This human, this strange, mysterious person, was her only chance. She had no idea where he had come from or why he was risking everything for her and her daughter. But in that moment, it didn't matter. All that mattered was that he was here. He was fighting for Lyra's freedom. As the human moved to engage the Zyrgans once again, Thera clutched Lyra's hand tightly. She had always believed that her people were the last hope for peace, but now she realized that hope could come from the most unlikely of places. That the human wasn't just saving her daughter. He was showing her something she had almost forgotten, a new kind of strength. A strength that didn't come from the power of an empire or the wisdom of ancient technology, but from the heart of someone who was willing to fight for what was right. And just like that, the battle for Lyra's future had begun. The sudden arrival of the human had thrown the Zyrgans into chaos. Their flawless, calculated plans had been disrupted by this strange and unexpected force. Commander Zar stood frozen for a moment, his eyes narrowing as he assessed the situation. The human was far more dangerous than he had anticipated. The human's speed, precision, and technology were unlike anything he had ever seen, and the enforcers were struggling to adjust. For Thera, the moment felt like an eternity. She crouched behind the ship with her daughter, trying to steady her breath. The air was thick with tension, and the sounds of blaster fire echoed around them. The human, despite his apparent calm, had been in action for only moments, yet already he had incapacitated several Zyrgan soldiers, but Commander Zar was not one to back down. The Zyrgans were a proud species, and their empire had crushed countless civilizations. A single human, no matter how skilled, was not going to stop them from collecting their debt. The situation was growing more dangerous by the second. The human activated another device, creating a shimmering force field that protected Thera and Lyra. It crackled with energy, and for a moment, it seemed like the odds had shifted in their favor. Thera could feel the protective barrier humming around her, but she knew it wouldn't last forever. The Zyrans had powerful weapons, and they would keep coming, relentless in their pursuit. The human didn't seem fazed by the pressure. He was focused, scanning the battlefield, moving swiftly and efficiently. It was clear to Thera now that this wasn't just a man from another world. He was a soldier. His every move was calculated. He was not fighting on impulse, but on training, experience, and an unshakable will. "Stay close," he whispered to Thera, his voice barely audible over the sounds of the skirmish. "We need to get to the ship. It's the only way we're going to escape." Thera nodded, her heart still racing. She had spent her whole life avoiding conflict, and now her life had been turned upside down. In the blink of an eye, She went from a peaceful healer to someone fighting for her child's future. This human was her only chance, but the idea of relying on an outsider, someone who knew nothing of their ways, felt strange. She wasn't used to placing trust in strangers, yet here she was, clinging to the hope that he could save them. Meanwhile, the Zyrgans were regrouping. Commander Zar barked orders to his soldiers, his voice cutting through the chaos like a whip. Focus fire on the human. Nothing gets in the way of the debt's repayment. He signaled for reinforcements. More ships appeared in the sky dark. Shadows against the purple alien horizon. The Zyran Empire had more than just soldiers. They had power, resources, and numbers. Thera felt the weight of the situation press on her chest. The human had been amazing so far, but could he really stand against the full force of the Zyrgans? Even with his advanced technology, there were only so many defenses he could manage. She could see their reinforcements landing, at least a dozen more soldiers in heavy armor, carrying larger, more powerful weapons. The human's eyes narrowed as he saw the Zyrgans advancing. We don't have much time. When I say run, you run. No questions. Thera didn't hesitate. She trusted him, despite everything. She had no other choice. The human jumped into action, charging toward the advancing Zyrgan forces. Thera's heart skipped a beat. She was about to lose him, wasn't she? The Zyrgans were too strong. But then, the human moved with incredible agility, ducking behind cover, using his environment to his advantage. He wasn't just fighting the Zyrgans. He was outsmarting them. One of the Zyrgan soldiers aimed a powerful blaster at him, but the human rolled to the side at the last moment, avoiding the blast and using his own weapon to disable the soldier in one swift motion. His movements were sharp, quick. He was like a shadow, always a step ahead. The Zyrgans, however, were relentless. They learned quickly, adapting to his style. Commander Zar's face twisted into a scowl as he watched the human evade his forces. Enough of this, he growled. We will take them down. Prepare the disruptors. The Zyrgans were pulling out their heavy artillery, now energy disruptors, capable of disabling any shield or technology. Thera's heart sank. If they hit the force field, they'd be exposed. Her daughter's life was at risk again. The human's face grew grim as he realized the new threat. He turned back to Thora. Listen to me, he said urgently. You need to get to the ship now. The field won't hold for much longer. Before Thera could respond, the human sprinted toward the Zyrgan soldiers, drawing their fire away from her and Lyra. A moment later, the first disruptor blast hit the force field. The shield sparked, flickered, and then began to fail. The sound of the blast was deafening, and Thera's heart stopped. She grabbed Lyra's hand tightly, ready to run, but the human was still fighting, keeping the Zyrgans distracted. Go! He shouted without turning back. Get to the ship now. Thera hesitated, unsure if she could leave him behind. The human had already saved them once, but now it seemed like he was sacrificing himself to buy them time. She didn't know him, yet she felt a deep sense of gratitude for what he was doing. She had no time to waste. If she didn't act now, her daughter would be lost. With a quick glance back at the human, Thera grabbed Lyra's hand and ran toward the ship. Each step felt like an eternity, but she had to move fast. As she neared the ship, she could hear the Zyrgans closing in. The human was still holding them off, but for how long? Thera didn't know. But in that moment, all she could do was trust that this stranger, this brave human, could somehow save them both. This part heightens the tension as the Zyrgan forces close in on Thera and the human. The human's actions are revealed to be more calculated, and he buys time for Thera and Lyra. But the stakes keep rising. The suspense is sustained by the countdown to the Zyrgans' full attack, and Thera's decision to trust the human becomes a pivotal moment in their journey. Thera's heart raced as she reached the ship, her breath ragged with fear. Lyra was still holding her hand tightly, looking up at her mother with wide, confused eyes. The force field around them flickered one last time before completely shutting down, leaving them exposed. The Zyran soldiers were closing in fast, their armored footsteps echoing in the silence. The human's voice came through the chaos, low but firm. "Get in the ship now." Thera didn't hesitate. She pushed Lyra forward toward the small hatch of the ship, praying that they would make it inside before the Zyrgans reached them. She barely noticed the human fighting in the distance, his movements growing more desperate. His fight was slowing, and Thera could hear the Zyrgans laughing in the distance, thinking victory was within their grasp. Just as she was about to step into the ship's entryway, something happened that made her stop cold. A strange vibrating hum filled the air, and a bright light suddenly exploded from the center of the battlefield. The human, who had been fighting valiantly, froze mid-motion, as if the energy wave had struck him like a blow. Thera squinted, trying to understand what she was seeing. The air around the human shimmered, and his body seemed to blur as the energy crackled around him. The Zyrgans, too, were caught off guard. Commander Zar shouted commands, but his voice was swallowed up by the sound of the growing hum. The strange force lifted the human off the ground, his body twisting unnaturally as if the very fabric of reality around him was warping. Then, just as quickly as it had started, the light stopped and the human was gone. Thera's heart skipped a beat. 1 second, he had been there, fighting with everything he had to protect them, and the next, he was just gone. It was as if he had vanished into thin air. She stared at the spot where he had been, frozen in disbelief. Her mind scrambled to understand what had just happened. Had the Zyrgans done this? Had they used some kind of weapon to teleport him away? Where did he go? Thera whispered to herself, her voice shaking. She couldn't believe it. He had been their last hope, their only chance at survival. But Lyra tugged on her arm, pulling her back to reality. "Mama, we have to go." Thera snapped her attention back to her daughter, who was looking up at her with an expression of confusion and fear. Thera took a deep breath and nodded. She wasn't sure what had happened to the human, but there was no time to figure it out now. If they stayed much longer, they would be caught, and Lyra would be lost. The Zyrgans had begun regrouping, their eyes now on the ship. The human's sudden disappearance had created an opening, and Thera knew they had to leave now. She stepped forward, grabbing the hatch and pulling it open. The inside of the ship was unlike anything she had ever seen. It wasn't large, but it felt well designed, with soft lights glowing along the walls and a calm, steady hum in the air. As Thera stepped inside, she looked around quickly. There was no time to explore. She had to keep moving. The ship's control panel was unlike any technology Thera had ever encountered. Buttons, lights, and strange symbols filled the walls, and Thera felt an overwhelming sense of uncertainty. She had no idea how to pilot this ship. How could she? She was a healer, not a pilot. She reached for one of the buttons on the panel, her fingers trembling, but before she could press anything, a voice crackled over a speaker. "Welcome aboard. I've been waiting for you." Thera froze. The voice was calm, almost robotic, but somehow familiar. She glanced over at Lyra, whose face was filled with confusion. The ship's AI system had just spoken, but why would it address her like that? Had the human been in contact with the ship's AI before? Or had the ship somehow known they were coming? "Who are you?" Thera asked, her voice shaky as she tried to keep her composure. "I am the ship's AI, but I'm also much more." The voice responded. "Your human ally activated my systems when he arrived, and now we are bound together. You, Thera, and your daughter Lyra are no longer just passengers. You are now part of something much greater." Thera's confusion only deepened. "What do you mean? What's happening?" The eye paused for a moment before speaking again. "The ship you are in is no ordinary vessel. It was created by a forgotten race, one that existed long before the Zyrgans even began their empire. This ship has the power to transcend time and space. It is capable of much more than mere travel, and now it is connected to you. Thara's mind spun as she tried to process this information. A ship created by an ancient race? A ship with the power to transcend time and space? None of it made sense. How could a simple healer like her be involved in something so grand? Before she could respond, a loud, deep rumble shook the ship. The Zyrgan forces had arrived at the ship's landing site, and their weapons were already being aimed at the ship. "Thara, you need to leave now," the IS voice said, sounding urgent. "This is your only chance to escape. Do not wait for your ally to return. He may be gone for now, but you must protect the future. Your daughter is key to what comes." Next, Thara's mind was a whirlwind of thoughts. The human was gone. The Zyrgans were closing in. And this strange, ancient ship was telling her that she and her daughter had some greater purpose in the grand scheme of things. It was too much, too fast, but she had no choice. The Zyrgans were ruthless, and they would stop at nothing to get what they wanted. The human sacrifice had bought her time, but now it was up to her to make sure Lyra's future was protected. Taking a deep breath, Thara reached for the controls again. "Take us out of here," she said, her voice steady. She wasn't sure what would happen next, but she knew one thing: their journey was far from over. And somehow they were connected to something much larger than they could have ever imagined. The ship hummed to life, and with a sudden violent jolt, they were off, leaving the Zyrgan forces behind and venturing into the unknown. This part introduces an unexpected twist with the mysterious AI and the ancient ship, giving the story a deeper layer of mystery and intrigue. Thara is faced with questions she doesn't have answers for, but she has no choice but to trust the ship's guidance as they flee into the unknown. Engines hummed steadily, a soft vibration that reverberated through the walls. Thara was still trying to grasp what had just happened. They had left the battlefield behind, but she couldn't shake the image of the human vanishing into thin air. Who was he? Where had he gone? And what did the AI mean when it said her daughter was key to what comes next? Her hands trembled as she sat at the ship's controls, Lyra beside her, still clutching her mother's hand. The ship was moving. Faster than anything Thara had ever imagined. But where were they headed? The AI had not given her any answers. It had simply insisted that they needed to leave, without offering a clear explanation. "Where are we going?" Thara asked, her voice trembling with both fear and curiosity. "We are heading to a safe location," the AI replied. "There is no time to explain fully, but rest assured, Thara, your daughter is the key to unlocking the future. You and she must survive this battle. It is the only way." Thara's mind raced. What battle? Her daughter Lyra was just a child, not even 5 years old yet. What could she possibly have to do with anything that was happening? And how was it that a simple healer from a small village had become the center of such an impossible situation? As the ship surged forward, a sudden warning flashed across the control panel. A loud alarm blared, and the lights flickered in the ship. Thara's heart skipped a beat. She looked down at the panel, reading the message. Zyrgan ship detected incoming. Her breath caught in her throat. The Zyrgans hadn't given up. They were relentless, and now they were tracking them. Commander Zar hadn't been content with just sending a few soldiers after them. Now he was sending an entire fleet. A voice crackled over the comms. "Thara, brace yourself. The Zyrgans are closing in fast," the eye warned. "You need to fight." Thara's heart pounded. Fight? She was no warrior. She was a healer, a mother, and an unwilling participant in a war that she barely understood. But there was no escaping this fight now. Lyra's life was in danger, and the Zyrgans. wouldn't stop until they had what they wanted. Thera felt a surge of determination, a spark of something deep within her. She wasn't just running anymore. She wasn't just protecting her daughter. She had to fight, even if she didn't know how. "Okay," Thera whispered to herself, her hands shaking as she reached for the controls. While fight, the ship lurched as the AI activated defensive systems. Thera could feel the energy shields power up around them, vibrating with strength. It was comforting, but also terrifying. The Zyrans were closing in, and she could sense the danger in the air. This wasn't just about survival anymore, it was about something bigger, something she couldn't yet understand. Outside, the sky was dark, and Thera could see flashes of enemy ships appearing from behind asteroids and clouds of gas. The Zyran fleet was vast, made up of dozens of sleek, menacing vessels. They were closing in from all directions, boxing Thera and Lyra in. "You need to pilot the ship, Thera," the AI said. "If you want to survive, you must engage the Zyrgans. Use the ship's weaponry." Thera's eyes widened. Weaponry? She had no idea how to operate weapons, but the AI seemed insistent, almost urgent. She looked down at the control panel, searching for any hint of how to activate the weapons. Her fingers hesitated over the glowing buttons, but then something inside her clicked. She wasn't just a healer anymore. She was a mother fighting to protect her child. With a steady breath, Thera pressed a large red button that seemed to pulse. With energy, the ship shuddered as a brilliant beam of energy shot out from its front, hitting one of the Zyrgan ships dead on. The blast sent the Zyran ship spiraling, but it didn't explode, only disabled. The Zyrgans were relentless, and Thera knew this wouldn't stop them for long. "Good," the AI said, its voice somehow calm amidst the chaos. "Now use the ship's thrusters to maneuver. Get them off balance." Thera didn't question the AI's instructions. She followed its commands, expertly turning the ship to dodge the incoming fire from the Zyrgan fleet. She could feel the hum of the ship's engines, the way it responded to her movements. It was like the ship was alive, almost as if it understood what she needed. But even with the ship's incredible technology, the Zyrgans were powerful. They were determined, and their ships had advanced weaponry that seemed to rain down from the sky like deadly raindrops. The ship's shields were holding strong, but the Zyrgans were adapting, firing from multiple angles, surrounding them. "Brace for impact," the AI warned as a Zyrgan vessel fired a massive cannon directly at them. The impact shook the ship, sending Thera and Lyra flying forward. Thera's heart skipped a beat as she grabbed Lyra, shielding her from the blast. The ship's shields flared brightly, absorbing the blow, but the force sent them spiraling through space. No. Thera gasped, her fingers frantically pressing the controls to stabilize the ship. She managed to level them out, but the Zyrgans weren't far behind. She had to act fast. "Activate the evasive maneuvers," the AI instructed. "Deploy the countermeasures." Thera's hands flew across the control panel. She pressed the button for evasive maneuvers, and the ship shot forward at an impossible speed, weaving in and out of the Zyrgan ships with surprising agility. Each time they came close to a blast, the ship jerked away, narrowly avoiding destruction. But the Zyrgans were still closing in. Thera's hands were slick with sweat as she maneuvered the ship with all her strength. She couldn't let them take Lyra. She couldn't let them win. "Hold on," the AI said, its voice suddenly louder, more forceful. "I have an idea. I can overload the ship's core and give us a chance to escape. It will be risky, but it might just work." Thera didn't hesitate. She pressed another button, activating the overload sequence. The ship's core began to hum loudly, the energy inside building to a dangerous level. They had moments seconds before. The Zyrgans caught up. Thera glanced at Lyra, her daughter's face pale with fear, but she squeezed her hand and whispered, "We're almost there." "Hold on." The core detonated. The ship exploded into a burst of light and energy. propelling them forward at an impossible speed. The Zyran ships behind them were left in the dust, their weapons useless against the sudden burst of speed. But Thera knew this wasn't the end. It was just the beginning of their battle. As the ship shot forward into the vast unknown, Thera couldn't help but wonder, was this the fight she had been prepared for? Was this the battle she would win? The Zyrgans were relentless, but so was she. And she would protect her daughter no matter what it took. This part elevates the tension with Thera's desperate battle to protect her daughter while the Zyrgans close in. It introduces her growing determination and her reliance on the ship's technology, building to a thrilling escape sequence. The battle is far from over, and the mystery surrounding Lyra's importance continues to unfold. The ship was shaking violently now, every moment a fight for survival. The overload had pushed them into high-speed escape mode, but the Zyrgans were still hot on their tail. Thera's grip on the controls tightened, her knuckles white as the ship hurtled through the void of space. The warning lights blinked furiously around her, and the ship's hull creaked under the pressure of the rapid acceleration. Lyra, sitting beside her, was clinging to her mother's side, her small face pale with fear. Thera could feel the child's heart pounding in her chest as the ship darted through space, narrowly avoiding Zyrgan fire with every twist and turn. They were in a race against time against enemies far stronger, faster and better equipped. "We can't keep this up," Thera muttered under her breath, her eyes scanning the control panel. The Zyrgan ships were still in pursuit, their relentless guns firing blast after blast. The ship's shields had already absorbed countless hits, but it wouldn't hold for much longer. If the Zyrgans kept pushing them, they would eventually overpower them. Her mind raced, searching for a way out. The AI had given her control over the ship's systems, but it had also warned her that the situation was growing more dire. The ship could outrun the Zyrgans for a while, but they couldn't run forever. They needed a plan and escape route, something the Zyrgans wouldn't expect. The IAS voice suddenly echoed through the ship's comms, calm but firm. "Thera, I am analyzing your situation. I have a potential solution, but it will require you to trust me fully. If you do, we may have a chance." Thera's heart skipped a beat. Trust? She was already relying on the AI to keep them alive, but now it was asking her to trust it with their lives in ways she hadn't imagined. But what choice did she have? "I'm listening," Thera said, her voice tight with urgency. "There is a hidden sector within the ship," the AI explained. "It is a specialized dock that leads to a long-range escape vessel. However, accessing it is not easy. It requires a sequence of systems to be activated. The Zyrgans are closing in, and time is running out. But if you can reach this hidden dock, you will have a chance to escape." Thera felt a flicker of hope, but it was quickly replaced by doubt. A hidden dock? A secret escape vessel? She had no idea how the ship worked, let alone how to activate this mysterious escape route. But the eye was insistent, its voice unwavering. "Trust me, Thera. Your daughter's life depends on it." Thera's mind raced. There was no more time to hesitate. She had to act, she had to try. "Where do I go?" Thera asked, her voice trembling. With determination, turn to the left down the hallway. Follow the blue markings. They will lead you to a hidden elevator. The rest of the sequence will be revealed once you reach it. But you must hurry. Thera didn't wait another second. She slammed her fist onto the ship's autopilot switch, and the ship automatically began to follow the course the AI had set. She grabbed Lyra's hand, pulling her gently but firmly toward the door. The moment they left the cockpit, the weight of their situation seemed to hit Thera all at once. The corridor was dimly lit, the walls of the ship now vibrating with the growing intensity of the chase. The Zyrgans were still firing, but for the moment, their shots were missing. The ship's shields were strong, but Thera knew they wouldn't hold forever. The hallway stretched out before them, and Thera's heart pounded as they moved toward the blue markings on the walls. Each step felt like an eternity, each second. A desperate race against death. Her mind flashed back to the battle. The Zyrgans had been so close to capturing Lyra, so close to taking her away, and the human who had fought so hard to protect them was now gone. Thara's eyes stung with unshed tears, but she didn't stop moving. She couldn't afford to. Finally, they reached the elevator. The doors slid open with a soft hiss, and Thara pushed Lyra inside. She pressed the button, and the elevator began its descent. As the walls slid past, the hum of the ship's engine seemed to fade into the background, replaced by the pounding of Thara's heart. She glanced at Lyra, who was clutching her hand tightly, her eyes wide with fear. "Don't worry, little one," Thara whispered, squeezing her daughter's hand. "We're going to be okay." The elevator stopped with a jolt, and the doors opened to reveal a small, hidden chamber. It was smaller than the rest of the ship, but it felt strangely safe. Thara stepped inside, looking around quickly. The room was sleek and futuristic, with panels lining the walls. There was a central console in the middle, and Thara instinctively moved toward it. The IS voice came through once again. "Activate the central console, Thara. It will trigger the activation sequence for the escape vessel." Thara's fingers trembled as she reached for the console. The buttons lit up in front of her, glowing with a soft blue light. She pressed the first one, and a series of complex symbols flashed across the screen. Wave of panic surged in her chest. She didn't understand any of this. But then, she remembered something the human had said before he vanished. "You have to trust yourself. You can do this." She took a deep breath and pressed the next button. The ship seemed to respond to her touch, and a low hum filled the chamber. The lights flickered once, then steadied. Thara felt a sudden surge of energy, as though the ship had come to life under her command. "Good," the AI said. "Now, prepare for launch. The escape vessel is ready." Thara's heart raced. This was it. The ship's escape vessel would take them away from the Zyrgans, away from everything, but she couldn't shake the feeling that this was only the beginning. Lyra looked up at her, her face full of wonder. "Are we going to be safe now, Mama?" Thara nodded, swallowing hard. "Yes, baby, we're going to be safe." The escape vessel detached from the main ship with a sudden lurch. The Zyran fleet was left behind, their weapons useless against the small, agile escape vessel that shot through space. As the stars rushed past, Thara finally allowed herself to breathe. They had escaped, but a nagging thought lingered in her mind. What had she just triggered? What was this mysterious ship? And what role did Lyra play in all of this? The answers were still out there, waiting to be discovered, but for now, they had survived, and that for Thara was enough. In this part, the escape plan comes into play, and Thara takes a leap of faith, relying on the AI to help her navigate a hidden escape route. The stakes are high, and the tension is palpable as she struggles to protect Lyra and find a way to escape the relentless Zyrgan forces. As they enter the unknown, new questions arise, setting the stage for what's to come. Asterisk, the escape vessel, had been traveling for what felt like hours, the soft hum of its engines a constant presence in the background. Thara sat silently beside her daughter Lyra, who had long since fallen asleep, her head resting against Thara's side. The quiet of the vessel was a stark contrast to the chaos they had just fled. They had left the Zyrgans behind, or so it seemed, but Thara's mind was far from at ease. She glanced out of the small viewport at the endless expanse of space. The stars twinkled coldly, distant and unfeeling. She had always found the stars beautiful, but now they seemed more like a vast, unknowable void. The Zyrgans could still be out there, waiting, watching. The human who had fought so fiercely to protect them was gone. And with him, the only real hope they had ever had of understanding the larger forces at play. Thara shook her head. "No, I can't think like that," she thought. "We made it out. We're free for now, Her hands rested gently on Lyra's small form. She couldn't help but wonder what kind of future awaited them. The ship, the escape route, it all felt like part of a larger plan, something she didn't fully understand. The Eye had spoken of Lyra being the key to the future, but what did that mean? What was so special about her daughter? And why had the Zyrgans been so intent on taking her? Thara closed her eyes and exhaled slowly, trying to calm her thoughts. There was no point in dwelling on what she couldn't control. For now they were safe. They had made it out alive. And that was enough. A soft chime broke her thoughts, and the Ayas voice filled the cabin once more. Thara, we are approaching a new location. It is a safe haven, but we must make preparations. Thara sat up straighter, her attention fully on the Eye. What kind of safe haven? She asked, her voice cautious. A hidden planet, the Eye explained. It is a place known only to a select few, and its inhabitants are neutral. They do not align with the Zyrgans, nor any other empire. It is a place of refuge for those who seek to escape oppression. Thara's heart gave a small leap. A safe haven? A place where they could be free of the Zyrgans? For a moment, it felt like hope had returned, like something tangible had emerged from the darkness. But she couldn't shake the unease in her chest. They had been on the run for so long, and it felt almost too good to be true. How do you know it's safe? Thara asked, her voice steady but filled with suspicion. The AI had been guiding them this far, but she had no real way of knowing its true intentions. I understand your doubts, Thara, the AI responded, its voice neutral. But I am programmed to serve and protect you and your daughter. The planet is hidden, and the Zyrgans will not find you there. It is the only place where you and Lyra can rest, free from pursuit. Thara hesitated for a moment. It seemed too easy, too convenient. But then she looked down at Lyra, still sleeping peacefully in her arms. The girl was exhausted, as was Thara. She hadn't had a moment of peace in what felt like forever. If there was a chance for them to be safe, to truly rest and find answers, she had to take it. All right, Thara said softly. Take us there. The ship's engines hummed more loudly as it adjusted course, heading toward the planet. Thara stared out the viewport again, her thoughts drifting back to the human who had helped them escape. Was he really gone? What had happened to him, and why had he appeared when he did? She wanted to know more, she needed answers. But right now, all she could do was hold her daughter close and hope that this new planet would give them the peace they so desperately needed. The journey didn't take long, and soon, the vessel descended through a cloud of bright, swirling colors, nebulae and asteroid fields giving way to a lush green planet below. The surface of the planet was dotted with large, sprawling forests, winding rivers and towering mountains. The planet looked beautiful, peaceful even. Thara had seen many planets, but none had looked quite like this one. It was as if the world itself had been untouched by war, untouched by the violence of the galaxy. As the ship touched down gently on the surface, Thara couldn't help but feel a strange sense of relief. They had arrived. But at the same time, she knew this was only the beginning. They had escaped the Zyrgans, but the question remained, what was the next step? What was Lyra's role in all of this? And how would they build a life here, in this new place, with so many unanswered questions? The ship's doors opened with a soft hiss, and Thara stepped out, holding Lyra's hand. The air was crisp and fresh, unlike anything she had experienced before. It felt clean, untouched. The land around them seemed to hum with life-soft, quiet sounds that filled the air, as if nature itself was welcoming them. A figure approached them, walking through the tall grass. Thara tensed instinctively, but the figure held up a hand in peace. It was a tall being, humanoid, but with an aura of calm and wisdom that was immediately apparent. Its features were unlike any species Thara had seen, with smooth, silver-toned skin and eyes that shimmered like the stars above. Welcome, the figure said in a soft, melodic voice. I am Ilara, a guardian of this world. You have found sanctuary here." Thera felt a surge of emotion. Sanctuary. It was a word she hadn't dared to hope for. But now it seemed like a real possibility. "You are safe here," Ilara continued. "And your journey is far from over. The universe has many stories to tell, and you and your daughter are part of one that is just beginning." Thara looked down at Lyra, whose eyes were wide with curiosity. "What do you mean?" Thera asked, her voice soft, yet filled with wonder. Illyra's eyes met Thara's, a knowing glimmer in them. "Your daughter is the key to a much larger change, Thera. The future of many worlds depends on her. But to unlock that future, you must first understand the legacy she carries." Thera felt a chill run down her spine. The weight of Ilara's words settled heavily on her heart. They were no longer just running for survival. There was a purpose to all of this, a purpose tied to Lyra, to the future, to the galaxies that surrounded them. The journey was just beginning. This final part brings Thara and Lyra to a safe haven, offering a moment of peace while hinting at deeper mysteries ahead. The arrival of Ilara introduces new layers of intrigue, suggesting that their journey is far from over and that Lyra plays a crucial role in a larger cosmic story. It ends with a sense of both resolution and anticipation, setting up the next chapter in their adventure.